the situation. Suddenly, Baron opened the door, questioned, "How did you get in here? Are you with the other intruder?" Winsome replied, "Yes." Baron cast flash ray attack toward Winsome, but just blocked easily. Winsome said, "Child, there's no longer a reason for you to fight me." Winsome cast heal, then Baron was unable to move at all. Barry told Baron, "Stop it. He is a deity, and not someone you can address so flippantly." Barry apologized and said, "Our king humbly asks for your presence." Aldir introduced themselves and said, "Winsome and I have been sent here to give you lesser beings a chance of survival in the imminent war with the Vritra. Have already taken the first step of discarding the corrupted. The Graysenders have been eliminated and their lances are now under my control. But we have also gracefully decided to look past any misguided decisions that may have been made." Lane said, "Your Majesty, if I may say something, it is clear that your capabilities are beyond ours. And the Asuras not go to the continent of Alakria and defeat the Vritra without the help of us." Aldir denied and said, "I am afraid it is a lot more complicated than that. The Vritra clan, along with the 3 other clans under their command, were all former Asuras who have broken our law. A battle of that magnitude would undoubtedly level the world. The Asuras and the Vritra clan had agreed to a treaty where no higher beings can directly attack another or interfere with any lesser beings." Arthur questioned, "Hold on. Does not the fact that you killed the Graysenders contradict that?" Winsome said, "Dicathan is now up against a population governed directly by a Grona of the Vritra. He would not be rash enough to break the treaty for us, simply evening out the playing field." Arthur questioned, "What of the black-horned demons that have been invading our land for years? They have been here much longer than we have been aware of them. One was even responsible for killing a lance." Alduin, curious how Arthur know about this. Cynthia took out and questioned, "Are you talking about the owner of this fragment?" Aldir said, "Boy, I see it was not a lie when Winsome said you are not simple. The ones that have been sneaking into this continent are not Asuras. Those monsters were once lesser beings, such as yourself, that have gone through countless experiments. These monsters are limited and are grown as trump card in this ward. He will not dispatch them as recklessly as before now, as he knows of my presence. Think of me as a general in this upcoming war. It is in the Asura's best interest to defend this continent. After all, Winsome brought Arthur to visit his family, as your training will be held in Ephatus." From the conversation, while on their way to find Arthur's family, there are 8 races of Asuras in Ephatus, each race comprising multiple clans, but only one clan of each race is considered one of the High 8, and the Vritra clan is part of the Basilisk race. Arthur couldn't believe the rest of the clans tried to assassinate a Grona. I would have thought the treaty was the first and only answer because, peace and all that. Winsome replied, "A Grona was a little too dangerous for us to consider a treaty from the beginning. We had no idea what he was doing on Alakria or what he had in store for us. We agreed it was best to get rid of a Grona directly." Arthur said, "I'm still a little confused about how Sylvia fits into all this, and why she even ended up in Dicathan." Winsome explained, "Arthur, what I am about to disclose must stay with you. This information is known only to a few members of the Indrath clan. At that time, Lady Sylvia traveled down with the elite division to defeat a Grona." He continued, "Lord Indrath did not allow her to do anything. She concealed herself and snuck onto the team, only revealing herself when it was too late for her to return. As for how she was captured and why she hid even from us after she escaped, I am not sure." Arthur responded, "So what happened to the Asuras that went down?" Winsome replied, "Something none of the leaders expected. A Grona was waiting not only with a larger army of basilisks, but also with lesser races that had the same innate magical abilities as the Asuras. The Vritra clan had been interbreeding with the lesser races on Alakria. He continued, interbreeding and experimenting. We were tremendously outnumbered by tens of thousands of mutts. Everyone from Ephatus was killed or captured. A Grona appeared before Lord Indrath, delivering the news himself that Lady Sylvia was killed in battle. Winsome explained, Lord Indrath was ready to wage war, ignoring the consequences, but the other clans pushed for a treaty. It forbids the Asuras from acting directly because of the collateral damage that would fall on this world. If the 7 Asura races of Ephatus were to go to war with the Vritra, we wanted to push for accountability from the other basilisks in Ephatus. He added, but it would be wrong to punish an entire race for a few wrongdoings, to just experiment like that. Arthur thought the other clans of Ephatus probably could have done the same as the Vritra, creating powerful soldiers from interbreeding, but their morals and their pride probably stopped them. If Grona had really spent all those years on Alakria, then the numbers of Vritra must have grown substantially, let alone the power imbalance between Alakria and Dicathan. Winsome replied artifacts were handed down to the people of Decathan in order to create a more even battlefield. About your role, it will be easier for both of us if you just see it as trying to protect your friends and family. Speaking of your friends and family, have you considered how you are going to break the news to your parents? Soon, Arthur noticed a pleasant smell and asked if there was enough food for him. His family was happy to see him, but they also felt the pressure from Winsome's presence. Arthur introduced Winsome as the person who saved him and a prospective teacher. Arthur later had a private talk with Alice and Ray. Arthur said, "There is something I have thought long and hard about telling you two ever since I came to this world. I was transported, reborn, something happened, and I was taken from my world and brought into this one." Alice and Ray were worried and felt that something was wrong. Arthur continued, "I don't know the correct term for this phenomenon either. I have thought about this for a while, but my best guess is that it is something akin to reincarnation." He described the world he came from and the role he played there. Throughout it all, Alice and Ray stayed silent for the most part. Suddenly, Alice laughed and questioned, "This is all a joke, right? You can't really be some former king who died and was transported into the mind of my unborn child, right?" Alice was shocked and found it unacceptable. Arthur went outside and let them cool down. Ray asked Ellie to accompany Alice while he had a private talk with Arthur. Ray knew Arthur had no reason to lie about this. It all made sense now. The early awakening, Arthur's brilliance as a fighter and a mage. But, of course, Ray was not okay. This was not easy news to swallow. All the memories they had as a family in the past, were they all a facade? Ray said, "Was the way you acted how you thought the son we wanted would have been. How am I supposed to act around you now? You were once technically older than me, yet you are here now as my 13-year-old son. And your mother nursed you as an infant. She mothered a middle-aged man, thinking he was her own son." Ray punched the wall and said, "I am sorry, but are you really our son? Or did you take over the unborn baby? It would have been our son during your reincarnation, or whatever it is that happened to you. I did not mean that. I am sorry. I am just very confused right now." Arthur said, "Like I said earlier, the truth is I really don't know. Maybe I did replace the baby that could have been your son, but I don't know how this process that brought me here works. I did not want to keep hiding this from you guys, but now I am questioning whether I made the right choice." He continued, "I wanted to tell you for so long, but never had the courage to. I wanted to say this before I left." Arthur expressed his gratitude. "You know, I never had any memories of family in my own world. Growing up in an environment where no one truly loved me made me an unrivaled fighter but a crappy person. But ever since coming to this world, the two of you and later Ellie taught me something I had never known. I may not be the strongest fighter or mage in this world, but I am a hell of a better person now than I ever would have been in my previous life. I am sorry for the hurt I caused. Thank you for making me a better man, and thank you for loving me as your son." Renia said, "Are not you going to say goodbye to your family?" Arthur replied, "No need. I have already sorted out everything I needed to hear. Thank you. I leave them in your care." Renia noticed his expression and said, "Your expression is frightening. It is unbefitting of someone as kind-hearted as you. I can only begin to understand the gravity of the upcoming battles that lay ahead of you, but do not fall back into your old ways. You know best that the deeper you go into that pit, the harder it will be to climb back out. Now you can go. I will take care of things here." Arthur questioned Winsome, asking if there was something wrong with his expression. Winsome replied, "Your expression reminded me of the pantheon Asuras of Epheatus. They are a race of fierce warriors that have learned to close off their emotions in order to fight with the most efficiency. A very useful technique indeed." He continued, "Are you sure you have tied up your loose ends here? I need your full concentration once we are in Epheatus." Arthur said, "I am ready." Ray thought to himself, I hated myself for what had happened. A part of me wished I had told Arthur that it was okay, that he was still family. But a bigger part of me, the part that I hated, wished he would have just never told us. I had known since early on in Arthur's life that he was different. Maybe it was so hard for me to accept it because it went against my own pride. My own selfish pride that maybe, just maybe, I had raised a genius that only comes once in a millennium. He reflected on the signs that had always been there. Arthur's strange behavior from an early age, his unexplainable prowess as a swordsman, and his talents as a mage. Renia, who had overheard Ray's thoughts, said, "He left you know? I was afraid of the day when he would tell you." Ray was surprised that elder Renia knew everything. Renia responded, "I see many things, but only for that boy do I have to grind my old head to try and piece together what is in store for him." Ray remarked, "He is hardly a boy." Renia replied, "He is still a child to me, much like how you are still a child as well. I always thought it was funny, the preconceptions that people have about age and intelligence. The older someone is, the more wisdom he or she should possess, and the more intelligent someone is, the more logical he or she should be. Pair those two traits up and the intelligent senior should be some cold calculating shrew, don't you agree? Ray didn't understand what this had to do with Arthur. Rainia continued, weren't you wishing Arthur would have just kept his mouth shut? Bet you would feel better being ignorant of who the boy really is. I bet you were also wondering why the boy told you in the first place, right? The heart remains the brain's biggest foe. Rainia paused for a moment and then continued, well, actually, for men, the brain's most formidable foe is something else. As I was saying, emotion, the heart, constantly clashes against things like validity, efficiency, utility, anything logical. That is what gets us hurt or even killed, yet we can't seem to help it. It makes us lesser as individuals, but greater as a group. I have known the boy since he was a mere toddler in this world, and he has come a long way since then. Rainia concluded, perhaps this was the large step he had to take to fully break out of that cold shell he once found safety and comfort in. Hold on to this for me so that I can prepare some food for your wife. Arthur's master told me it was a gift for the Lewin family. Ray noticed that it was a mana beast, and at that moment, Ellie came out and stared at the mana beast. She decided to name the bearboo because the black spots made him look like he was always mad. After Alice woke up, both Ray and Alice engaged in a conversation about Arthur. They were having a hard time accepting the truth. They reminisced about the moments they had shared with Arthur. They laughed together, fought together, celebrated together, and shed tears together. They remembered the moment when Arthur had sacrificed his life for Alice on their way to Xyrus, realizing that he wouldn't have done something like that if he didn't care about her. Ray said to Alice, you are not a horrible person. It's just going to take us time to wrap our heads around this. Soon, Arthur reached Ephatus. Arthur asked, are there not any guards or watchmen in the Indrath clan's castle? Winsome replied, they have been watching us since we crossed over the bridge. Now come over, we should not keep Lord Indrath waiting. Arthur wondered, so this is Sylvie's home. Any last tips before meeting this almighty Lord of Lords? Sylvie's grandfather? Winsome responded, unfortunately, even I do not know what to expect. The situation is rather peculiar after all. As they arrived, Arthur pondered, so this is Lord Indrath. His aura was unable to sense it at all. Suddenly, Arthur felt a burning sensation, and Sylvie was instantly teleported to Lord Indrath's side. Lord Indrath said, I see you have done nothing to train her. Her mana levels are insultingly low, and by how she appears to have gone into a hibernating state right now, it seems that you have strained her. Winsome quickly apologized and said, I should have trained Lady Sylvie while I was in Dicothan. If it is to your liking, I can start her training now as well. Lord Indrath denied, stating, I will personally look after Sylvie. He woke Sylvie up, which shocked her. Sylvie asked, Papa, where am I? Arthur reassured her, we are a bit far away, Sylv. How are you feeling? Sylvie replied, sleepy, can I go back to sleep? Arthur nodded and said to Lord Indrath, Elder Winsome has already explained what is needed of me, but he has yet to fill me in on why exactly I was brought here. If it was simply for training purposes, wouldn't some remote dungeon in Dicothan have been a suitable place? Lord Indrath explained, I had deemed you a necessary piece to help us against Tigrona and his growing army. Take it that you have already understood the mutual benefit in winning the approaching war. Yes, it will be most beneficial to assign several specialists to help Winsome in training you during your stay here. Think of it as an honor since only the most talented of the younger generations would receive the training you will go through. Lord Indrath added. Arthur focused on his training, while Sylvie stayed with Lord Indrath for her training. After leaving, Arthur expressed his thoughts. Being judged by Lord Indrath, I can take, but I was not prepared for Sylvie to be taken away. Winsome explained the relationship between you and the Asira is something of a grudge intolerance. Because of that, our Lord chose to make this meeting private. The very fact that we have no choice but to rely on a lesser being is a wound to our pride. Do not worry, both you and Lady Sylvie will not be mistreated. Suddenly, Winsome told Arthur to hold on tightly, then pushed him into a tree, and they went inside. Winsome greeted Cordry. Cordry is from the Thyists clan of the Pantheon Asura race, just like Aldir. Cordry curiously questioned Winsome about whether Lord Indrath truly granted the Ether Orb. Winsome took out the orb and replied, he has. Cordry wondered, Lord Indrath is truly investing much into this human. The Ether Orb will help Arthur's training immensely. We will be borrowing the dragon race's ability to influence ether, a powerful element that flows through and influences the entire universe, using the orb to separate the body from the soul, as well as its power to manipulate time. Winsome added, along with the orb, Lord Indrath has allowed us to use his exclusive training grounds. The ether-rich liquid inside this pond will help accelerate your training and heal wounds that you will incur throughout this process. Back at the institution in Arthur's previous life, they underwent 8 hours of combat training followed by 10 hours of meditation to nurture their Kysanders. There was no denying that the training was flawed. The only useful information the instructors taught were the vital spots of a human body, but their techniques were a brutish, senseless way of trying to inflict damage. Still, he had followed the instructor's training regimen to the bone and attended all the lessons he could. Before his Kai Center had cultivated, he spent those hours losing and failing against his classmates. It's funny how easily memories from the past resurface when we are placed in a similar situation. Cordry never stopped his punches on Arthur's body until Winsome said, "Enough." Arthur said, "He can keep going." Cordry replied, "The human boy has admirable willpower." How much time has passed this time? Winsome answered, "About 5 minutes out here, so roughly an hour for them in there. The more you are forced out of the soul realm, the more time is wasted in your training. Even with the slowing of time, you will not be ready for the war if you are expelled every few minutes." Arthur responded, "Don't blame me. Blame your friend who is killing me once every few minutes." Cordry said, "I am doing only what you are able to handle. Even young Asuras who don't die nearly as often as you do have a hard time coping with the stress. You are dealing with the sensation of dying quite well." Over a week had passed since Arthur started this torrid training, and what he learned was Lord Indrath's exclusive training grounds. When we began, Winsome explained that I would fight Cordry in my soul state thanks to the ether orb. The pain I felt while dying would be greatly diminished. It left me wondering how much more agonizing the pain would be in the physical realm. Counting the time spent out in the physical realm eating, sleeping, and resting after dying too many times in the soul realm, I had spent over a few months in this grassland training with the even-tempered and patient Cordry. It is embarrassing, but that is just the difference in power between us. Arthur hardly dodged Cordry attack. Cordry told him we should take a break from combat training for a while. Arthur, curious and questioned, "Am I not learning fast enough?" Cordry replied, "Your ability to grasp and comprehend is actually quite frightening. Because of that stubbornness of yours, I am afraid you are going to unwittingly break if we keep going at the current pace." Arthur questioned, "I thought the realm inside the ether orb would not allow me to die. Besides, my soul state is regenerating rapidly. As long as you don't kill me instantly, I should be okay, right?" Cordry explained, "I am talking about mentality. You are experiencing constant death. Death is no longer an end point, but the precursor for a level of pain that even Asuras find daunting. That kind of trauma will start to get in the way of producing the sort of fighter I am training you to become." Arthur about to stand up and said, "Honestly, I am fine. We don't need." Before his word end, Cordry releases bloodlust and a punch stabbed through Arthur's body. Cordry told him, "You have experiences and instincts different from most, and as much as there are things to be taught, there are many things that you will have to unlearn as well. It will mold you into an unparalleled fighter, not just among lesser, but among Asuras." Arthur thought, "I am trembling, but whether it is because of the lethal wound in my chest, the excitement from training with skilled mentors, or from the war we all have to prepare for, I had a feeling it was a mixture of all three." Now, Arthur continued his training with Cordry, knowing that Cordry was a monster and a true predator. Over a month had passed in the outside world, which meant about a year had passed in here. Cordry dodged Arthur's attack and quickly countered with his dagger, saying, "Your movements are getting better, even with my aura's suppression. Now, let's fight without weapons. I know you prefer sword fighting, and I have to say that Dawn's ballad is a fine partner to have. But as a mage, hand-to-hand combat continues to be the most versatile and adaptive form of fighting." Cordry explained, "For the sake of the coming war, I need to mold your bones, develop your muscles, and train your mind to its limits so that you will become the knight that protects your continent and your loved ones." Cordry further explained, "Since Asuras are not allowed to partake in this war, their descendants, the mixed bloods, will be their strongest forces. Expect to be put in a situation where you will be surrounded by enemies with Asura blood coursing through them. The restriction of mana usage placed on you will help you learn precise mana usage. When it comes down to it, physical combat, augmented with proper and precise mana usage, will be the most efficient and dependable way of disposing of your enemies." Cordry concluded, "The first lesson I taught you is how to stay alive, how to fight and dodge at higher speeds. Your lesson after that was fighting under conditions of substantial pressure. Combat under the effects of my king's force, or killing intent, as you call it, has strengthened your tolerance a considerable amount these past few months. But now for the third field of focus, your field of vision is too narrow, too focused. Arthur cast mutable punch attack toward Cordry. Cordry explained to him that was a nice punch, but how much strength do you supposed to use for releasing a strike of that power? Proper conservation and distribution of mana in prolonged battles is important, but the same goes for your body. Mana, like a sword, is a tool for you to control and utilize. Your body is the centerpiece that brings the tools together to create a true warrior. Cordry told Arthur, defend yourself with mana. I will allow it, and then he cast a purple spell, cause a huge explosion. Soon, Cordry introduced Tassai to Arthur, which will be Arthur's new training partner. Tassai said what benefit will come from training with this lesser being. Cordry said, Arthur has been receiving special training from me. You have been given the rare honor or training with the ether orb, yet you dare complain? Tassai replied, no, master. This pupil only thinks it beneath you to waste your time training a mere human when the Thyists clan has many pupils awaiting your mentorship. Cordry said to Arthur, while the members of the Pantheon race all differ in their utilization of what you call force-type mana, increasing our attack's area of influence, Tassai has been training in the special arts of the Thyists clan. By perceiving where the opponent is distributing their weight and momentum, we can match our attacks to properly take advantage of their strengths. By doing this, we use little effort to dispel their attacks and conserve our strength for when we attack. I have shown you only a glimpse of this, Arthur, but I want you to train it by fighting against Tassai. Cordry told Tassai, use your full strength. Do not worry about fatal injuries or death here. For Arthur, you are not allowed to use any mana and only simply block and deflect. The only form of offensive maneuvers you are permitted are throws. Tassai asked, this does not make sense. Could not you be putting restrictions on me instead of the human? Cordry said, Tassai, I grow tired of your whining. Do you doubt me? Let's begin. Tassai, despite being only 7 years old, displayed an exceptional amount of talent from the beginning, which caught the eye of the clan elders. However, after just a few days of training with all the restrictions in place, Arthur was slowly starting to keep up. His steps, shifts, and movements were becoming faster and sharper, as if his body was instinctively eliminating unnecessary motion. Cordry wondered how many battles Arthur had fought to develop such an abnormal level of perception. In my years as both a warrior and mentor, I have nurtured pupils who later became prominent figures in the Thyists clan. But training this boy has introduced me to a sensation I have never felt before. Excitement and pride continue to well up within me, emotions that I never even felt towards myself. There is no telling what he will become, and the longing to find out is exhilarating. If Arthur had been born an Asura, he would have been a prominent member even among the highest echelons of power. However, the gods had positioned him to be nothing more than a pawn used until no longer needed. What a pity. About 4 months had passed in the outside world, which meant Arthur had trained in the soul realm for nearly 4 years. He could now defend and dodge attacks from 4 enemies simultaneously. Although his physical body had barely aged, it had gained years of muscle memory and core levels under Cordry's tutelage. Arthur thought to himself, my 14th birthday recently passed. Just like any other day, I spent it honing my body, reflexes, and combat skills. Cordry had helped refine Arthur's mana usage for combat, but had not taught him anything new conceptually. Arthur wasn't sure if it was due to the physiological differences between humans and Asuras, or if Cordry was not allowed or willing to pass on the Thyists clan's mana arts to a non-clan member. Nevertheless, he trusted Cordry and absorbed whatever he did teach. After Cordry's training session concluded, Arthur thanked him for everything and inquired about the next phase of their training. Arthur wondered why both Winsome and Cordry seemed concerned about him. He explained that it was because he hadn't changed. Winsome clarified that while training under the ether orb could be tremendously beneficial, it was strictly forbidden to use it on children for prolonged periods. The time difference between the two realms could cause psychological displacement if a person's mental development wasn't complete. Cordry added that even Lord Indrath and himself had reservations about using it with Arthur, but the impending war left them no choice. Winsome said, yet your speech, demeanor, and mentality remain unchanged. Your mind has aged 3 years during your training here, but you have not displayed any of the changes a normal child would undergo. Arthur explained, I have been advanced for my age mentally for most of my life. I have grown accustomed to presenting myself as such. Becoming a professor at Xyrus to educate students my own age probably helped with that. Winsome replied, all the better for us and for your training. Before parting ways, Cordry reminded Arthur, remember the mages in Alakra have been taught and guided by Asuras. Mana arts on that continent are generations more advanced than they are in Dicathan. It frustrates me deeply that our hands are tied. but breaking the pact could result in a war that would destroy the world itself. If we don't want that, it is up to you and your peers to fight." Shortly after, Winsome handed Arthur a scroll letter containing information provided by Cynthia. Arthur deduced that the 4 sites mentioned in the letter would be his targets. Winsome confirmed. According to the letter, each of the 4 sides also has a retainer, a personal aide, and direct subordinate capable of easily dispatching a lance. There are 4 others who are even more powerful. We were able to draw conclusions based on the horn fragment collected from the slain former lance, Leah. Cynthia confirmed that it belonged to a prime blood of the retainer level. Arthur asked curiously, "So the one responsible for killing Aaliyah is what they call a retainer and not a size?" The scale of this upcoming war is immense, with 2 continents sending millions of soldiers to fight for their land. Ikathan and my family are currently safe, but for how long against the strength of the Vritra? At least now I finally have a goal, a solid number of enemies to work with. I have my targets. I soon arrived at the next location for Arthur's training. In this training section, Arthur could only use the items in his bag and was prohibited from using external mana arts. He had to obtain the pelt of a raptor squirrel, the beast core of a silver panther, and the claws of a titan bear. Arthur questioned, "And how will these items prove that I am ready to learn more about the wool Sylvia left me?" Winsome explained, "There is one more condition. You are to wear this at all times. When you have collected all the items on the list, let me know by breaking the bell. I recommend retrieving them in that order." Arthur realized that the bell alone was not the only thing alerting the raptor squirrels to his presence. They were also sensitive to his mana. Despite their lack of physical strength, raptor squirrels had developed acute senses to compensate. Merely hiding his presence was not enough. He needed to figure out another approach. He decided to withdraw all the mana that continuously circulated within his body, taking the risk of leaving himself physically vulnerable in this unfamiliar environment. But he soon realized that retracting his mana was not sufficient. He also needed to clear his mind and intent when dealing with prey animals. After a few more days of experimentation, Arthur discovered 3 crucial things. First, leaking even a small amount of purified mana would alarm the squirrels and make them impossible to catch. Second, internalizing mana inside his body did not trigger their alarm, but too much concentration and focus caused his intent to bleed out, scattering the squirrels. The last and most useful lesson was that external mana flow did not startle or alert them. As an augmenter, Arthur's mana channels responsible for spreading purified mana from his core throughout his body were more prominent than his mana veins, which absorbed unpurified atmospheric mana. This technique required a balance between the output of purified mana and the input of atmospheric mana. Years of practicing mana rotation had made it almost unconscious for Arthur, aiding him in achieving a perfect balance. This allowed him to utilize mana without anyone or anything sensing his presence. However, the need to replenish his mana core every few minutes was slowing down his progress. Nonetheless, Arthur understood that he needed to be able to use mana in bursts and pounce on the raptor squirrels before they could react to the sound of his bell. To achieve this, he had to balance the input and output of atmospheric mana and his purified mana to camouflage his presence until he arrived at the location. Arthur wondered if this skill was what Winsome was trying to test, a technique that involved erasing his presence by using barely traceable atmospheric mana to mask the output of his own mana. He needed to instantly gain speed to reach his opponent without shaking the bell. Meanwhile, Winsome wondered if he had placed too much faith in Arthur. It had been 2 weeks, and he expected the boy to have caught a squirrel by now. Despite their simplicity, the squirrels could sense any mana fluctuation or movement in the area. All Arthur needed to do was erase his presence, stay motionless with some bait in his hands, and he should be able to succeed. Nevertheless, Winsome was surprised when Arthur suddenly completed the first step of the Mirage Walk. To think that a mere human boy could grasp the fundamentals of Mirage Walk, the essence of what made the Thyists clan supreme in physical combat, just by observing Cordry. Winsome wondered how much Arthur would achieve in the next 5 years. After that, Arthur took 3 weeks of trekking deeper into the forest before he found Claude the Silver Panther. He had become proficient at Burst's step to the point where he could clear almost 10 yards in an instant without triggering the bell. But despite that, he was not any closer to catch Claude. Later, Arthur observed the birds for a week. They were stealthy and whiffed, but their speed could not compare to that of a raptor squirrel. It knew that when it made itself known, the squirrel would try to flee in a particular direction, so they manipulated their prey's movements instead. As a third-party spectator, I was able to see the bird beforehand, and I knew immediately what its motives were even before it attacked, something the squirrel had no way of knowing. But the panthers were different from the squirrels. Claude was smart enough to know he could evade me but not fight me face to face. Even though the essence of Mirage Walk was to conceal mana to throw off the opponent completely, I still had to move the muscles responsible for making that one incredibly fast step. It might work for the squirrels, but it gave just enough time for Claude to evade me. But what if I could get rid of that? What if I could almost entirely eliminate the motion needed for me to make that step? It would appear as if I had truly teleported. From my past life, I learned the body's intricate muscular system worked in pairs, each responsible for half of a complete movement. The biceps flexed when the arm curled towards the shoulder, while the triceps activated when the arm straightened out. The abdominal muscles contracted with each forward step the body took. The calf muscles were crucial, despite their smaller size, in propelling the body forward as the foot pushed off the ground. The body's mechanisms were even more complex when the body was put into motion, such as walking, running, or jumping. The knowledge of the body that I had retained from my previous life was not useful until now. I had been working toward a conscious and deliberate manipulation of mana into specific muscles in a specific progression with precise timing to artificially trigger a sequence in my body that mimicked the use of muscles without actually needing to move my body at all. If I could get the timing and mana output controlled perfectly, I would be capable of something even Cordry could not do. It could execute Mirage Walk in, but not limited to a standing position. Arthur telling himself, "Come on, how long are you going to spend catching wild animals out here?" Arthur noticed forests so quiet today, something is weird. And he spotted a territorial fight between two silver panthers. No wonder the forest is empty. And then he noticed the winning Claude run away like that. Arthur thought this might be my only chance. I sprint in front Claude, while Claude was struggling. Both Claude and Arthur fall from cliff. So Arthur has no choice and cast Wind's spell to avoid get injured. Suddenly Arthur spotted a cub full with red mark. Arthur wondered why the bear cub was talking. Winsome had not mentioned anything about the bears having the ability to speak. The bear cub grew angry and said, "I will start with you then." It launched a blunt attack towards Arthur, catching him off guard, followed by a few powerful long-range swipes. The bear grew even angrier when Arthur managed to dodge its attacks and counter with his own blunt attack. Arthur realized that this was not the soul realm. If he were to die here, it would be for real. The bear taunted him, asking if he was finally done. As the bear slashed with its paw, Arthur noticed that the resulting attack was a sharp slash. Acting as if he was giving up, Arthur allowed himself to be hit by the blunt attack, knowing that he needed to finish the fight quickly. In a swift motion, he blinked behind the bear. The bear, following the sound of the bell, attacked in that direction, only to find it was just a bell. Arthur took the opportunity to deliver a powerful punch, and as the battle came to an end, he fell unconscious. Soon Winsome arrived and wondered why Arthur had come all the way down here. Then he noticed that Arthur had at least 3 broken ribs, numerous deep gashes in his chest and legs, and internal bleeding. Winsome was curious how all this damage could have been caused by a cub. Even a full-grown bear standing at 10 feet tall would not have been able to cause such devastation. Then he spotted a demon leech crawling out from the bear's body. It was a truly rare specimen, as intelligent as it was foul, and native only to Ephatus. Its ability to possess the host's body and strengthen the host's core to an amazing degree would be deadly even to an Asura. Agrona himself experimented on them to create this strengthening serum that was given to Decathians during the Xyrus attack. Winsome grabbed the demon leech and fed it to Arthur, thinking that his difficulties had paid off tremendously. When Arthur woke up, he couldn't feel his leg. A woman said, "Your legs are fine. I only wish we could have met under better circumstances." Arthur questioned, "Are we still in Ephatus?" The woman named Meyer told him, "Of course. I would not have been able to mend the sorry state of your legs anywhere else. Using healing mana arts may have been faster, but it would have caused your bones to take on an entirely different shape. Now it has only been 2 days." Arthur was shocked to hear that it had already been 2 days. Meyer continued, "Don't even try to get up tonight. It took hours to get your legs knit back together into something resembling functional appendages. You need to get some rest." Arthur thought, I might as well meditate to try and heal faster, and he noticed that his core had already turned silver. With the beast will activated, Arthur wondered why he hadn't seen these purple specks before. Meyer said, "So it is true, you truly have inherited the realm heart. The physical manifestations displayed when you tap into Sylvia's powers, the iris glowing purple, those unmistakable glowing runes imprinted on your body. The realm heart, or the realm heart physique, is an ability that only the Andrath bloodline can possess. Tell me, child, were you able to see all 5 of the colors that make up the physical realm? Meyer asked. Arthur replied, I think so. Meyer explained, the realm heart physique was named by the ancestors of the Andrath clan. In this state, the user's attunement with the physical realm is said to be unparalleled. While the ability does not offer much strength in and of itself, the power to activate the realm heart allows the user to gain knowledge and insight that those without it can never hope to achieve, which is to say that knowledge truly is power. Arthur said, when I used the realm heart last time, I was only able to see 4 colors. Why am I only now able to see the purple particles? Is this one of those secrets that a lesser being like me can't know? Meyer explained, we Asuras are prideful beings, indeed. Even among other members of our race, we remain secretive and greedy, particularly the Andrath clan. I won't say that I am much different from them, but I have lived long enough and experienced far too much to care about such frivolousness. But still, I will be happy to teach you a thing or two. Care for a little stroll? Meyer brought Arthur to a garden and explained that someone with a realm heart physique fire affinity mage would appear to be absorbing only the red mana particles. However, upon completion of the refining process, the mana would appear white when first used. But let's say the mage has an affinity for water. During the process of refining raw mana, the amount of water element their body absorbs will be disproportionately larger than the other elements. As the mage refines the water elemental mana their body absorbs, the raw mana alters their body, making their mind more insightful about that particular element. For example, if the mage were to cast a fireball, a water affinity mage would need to concentrate hard on the shape, proportion, density, and speed of the launch. However, that same mage would have no trouble raising a stream of water, separating it into multiple orbs, and casting it to barrage an enemy with just a flick of the wrist. It is all because of the influence that absorbing a majority of the water element had on the mage during the refining process. After being exposed to a particular element for so long, the mage would undoubtedly gain insight during their meditation. Meyer further explained that ether is fundamentally different from mana. This is clear to anyone. Both entities make up the world we live in, but ether works very differently than mana. In simple terms, ether could be the cup, and mana the water that fills it. It's quite easy to manipulate the water inside without mana, but much more difficult to change the shape of the cup without breaking it. Even the Andrath clan, hailed as the most adept in utilizing ether, has no solid theory to justify what they are able to do. What they do have, which no one else has, is the ability to physically detect ether through the use of the realm heart physique. Those in the physical realm cannot sense ether. Everyone knows there are laws that hold our world together, just as this glass holds the water. It is impossible for them to fathom the boundaries that exist to keep order in the world. So, the purple particles Arthur saw earlier are ether. Meyer said, through the use of realm heart, you are able to see the glass cup from within the boundaries of this world. For mana, the greater the capacity of your core, the more water you can manipulate. However, through influencing ether, we can control the cup itself. Meyer explained that these are the 3 components that make up ether: control over time, evium, authority over space, spatium, and influence over all living components, vivum. No matter how powerful, insightful, or lucky a practitioner may be, they will only be able to master one path. Meyer continued, however, over time, we have discovered a way for some Asuras to discern where their aptitude lies. This is determined by the runes that appear on the body when using the realm heart. Runes are different for each realm heart user, but these markings show that I am of the vivum path. That is why I was able to heal you. Soon Meyer told Arthur to turn on his realm heart from their following conversation. Due to species as a human, it do have some physical limitations for Arthur. But Meyer told him, even if realm heart cannot be utilized to its full extent, it can be an incomparable asset in the coming battles because of its sensory functions. But for this movement technique that you have created, the one that brought you into my home in such a horrid state, it cannot be one of them. Never use that technique again. Arthur wondered all those weeks of training and refining burst step were for nothing. She asked me how Mirage Walk worked, seemingly surprised at how I taught myself. I hoped she would change her mind after learning about its mechanics. But it became clear that the move was dangerous. My breakthrough into the silver core stage was a pleasant surprise. A combat with Cordry would place me easily into the AA class as an adventurer even without the use of elemental magic. Now I had little to show in terms of improvement in the magic of mana arts. Mirage Walk was the only technique I had managed to piece together, but now that was gone. There were actual Asuras residing in Alarcria whose levels of mana manipulation were probably beyond what I could imagine. Meyer insisted that knowledge is power, but it won't help me defeat Alarcria. Next day, Meyer told him, "You had a hard night, I see, as anticipated with the use of vivum." Arthur replied, "It felt worse than when my legs got damaged, but at least I am able to walk now." Meyer said, "Which is good because I have asked Winsome for some time with you. That time can be both short or long depending on what you are able to achieve from the duration. I would like to share some of my knowledge with you and nudge you in the right direction. That you are still a human, and the inhabitants of Dicathan are far behind when it comes to their insight on mana." Meyer continued, "Now, my boy, consider every magical spell you know, and using whichever combination you like, hit me with all you have." Meyer instructed. As Arthur prepared his spell, Meyer said, "In your right palm, you are preparing a compressed water sphere, while your left hand will shoot a small gust of wind." Arthur was shocked and wondered how she even knew. Meyer told him, "Child, I told you to hit me with all you have." The next second, Meyer said, "You are planning on rupturing the ground under me, which is a clever idea, but I would prefer you did not ruin the grass. As I said, this is an ability you already have. I am simply nudging you in the right direction." With those words, days soon blurred into weeks as Arthur trained with Elder Meyer. Meyer said, "You did not look out for the spell behind you." Arthur replied, "I did not expect you to use your healing arts as an excuse to give me major injuries repeatedly." Meyer told him the proper interpretation of mana fluctuations starts with sensing the spells just as they affect the physical realm. Then you utilize realm heart to accurately determine what form they will take. Arthur questioned, "If you can heal all the wounds you give me so easily, why did you not just cut off my legs and grow me new ones?" Meyer explained, "Using ether past a certain threshold comes with costs. It is possible to heal major injuries, but I would have to extract the ether that was sustaining, or someone else." Arthur then said, "Well, then it would be great if you could stop striking me." Meyer told him, "Well, it would be great if you would stop falling for my feints." Meyer pointed out to Arthur, "Remember that even if your opponent chooses to vocalize their spell, it is what they are imagining that will actually affect the size, shape, and duration of that spell. You will come across enemies that will either use vocal projection as a feint to trick their opponent or none at all." Meyer pointed out Arthur's problem, saying, "It is because you are still getting ahead of yourself and trying to counter the spell before it manifests. It took me decades to get it right, and that was considered fast amongst us dragons." Arthur turned on Realm Heart and was able to sense Meyer's first spell, a wind bullet, followed by an earth spike under his right foot, and a blast flare. When it came to the fourth skill, Winsome blocked it and said, "I am afraid we are out of time for that." Winsome said, "Excuse my intrusion to Meyer." Arthur wondered, "I deduced that Meyer had a certain level of influence within the Indrath clan, given her power, and the fact that she had been able to keep me with her, but for Winsome to bow to her." Winsome said, "I apologize for coming without notice, but Lord Indrath has already arranged for Arthur's next instructor, and he is waiting rather impatiently for his student." Meyer told Winsome, "I understand Arthur has done well in his training with Realmheart. I do wish to keep tabs on this child, so there will be no problem if I pop in every now and then, correct?" Winsome nodded. Meyer told Arthur, "Remember what I told you about the world around us. Continue your training with Realmheart." While they were on their way to the next training session, Arthur questioned Winsome about Elder Meyer's identity, but Winsome told him, "I am not in the position to tell you if she has not told you herself." Soon, as they reached their destination, Winsome told him, "With Lady Meyer and me, you learn Amma interpretation and augmented melee combat, honing various skills and the key aspects necessary for fighting a war. Now, you will start fitting everything together into a cohesive style that utilizes your elemental magic and your melee combat skills." Ren, Arthur's next instructor, told Arthur to strip off everything except his underwear. Then Ren spotted the dragon's feather and took a closer look. Ren remarked, "It's too rare of a crafting material to be wasted as an arm warmer, don't you think?" Winsome explained, "The feathers on our wings are a particular type of scale with unique properties pertaining to both mana and ether. From the day we are born, we never shed our wing feathers, so for a dragon to deliberately give someone his or her feathers signifies trust and affection." Arthur was touched by the memories with Sylvia. Ren then grabbed Arthur and stared at his whole body, instructing him to start releasing all types of elemental spells in a specific order. After completing all the basic measurements and calculations, Ren told Arthur to fight with his golem. Arthur was surprised by the number of golems present, which amounted to a few thousand. Arthur activated his realm heart and prepared for the training. Later on, Ren told Arthur, "I need to learn more about your physical abilities. Winsome told me you are quite adept with a sword, and you have recently learned combat under Cordry's instructions. When Arthur took out his sword, Ren instantly grabbed it and laughed. Arthur said, "It's not as simple as it looks." Ren replied, "I know what it is, boy." Ren questioned Winsome, "Did you know this when you asked me to train him?" "I had an inkling." Arthur said, "It's not going to unsheath. I am the only one who can." But before his words finished, Ren drew out the sword and told him, "Is it because you are an Asura that you can draw the sword I have bonded with?" "It is because I made this sword." Arthur questioned, "Assuming that you did forge this sword, what was it doing in Dickathon?" Ren said, "Dawn's ballad was one of my experimental weapons, more or less a failure. I tossed it away in the beast glades of your continent during one of my visits to gather minerals, assuming no one would be able to tell it was anything other than a black cane. I think that it has somehow ended up in your possession. What are the odds?" Arthur, curious, said, "You consider Dawn's ballad a failure?" "I have never seen a sword of better make and quality in my life." Ren explained, "As complimentary as your words may be, comparing my weapons, no matter how poor their quality, to the primitive tools you lesser races use only insults me. I made this sword as more of a one-size-fits-all weapon. I must have been drunk when I thought that was a good idea. It just came out to be a sharp tool, nothing more." Ren stared at Winsome and said, "But this makes things interesting." Winsome replied, "I thought it might." "So what do you think now that you have met him? Will you do it?" Arthur questioned, "What is going on?" Winsome said, "Arthur, I brought you here to Ren to accomplish two things. The first is, as I mentioned earlier, while his methods are unconventional, Ren has an unusually keen eye for the practical art of combat. The second was that I hoped Ren would produce a sword that is a better fit for your own unique form of combat." Arthur, surprised, asked, "Is that true?" Ren said, "Well, I only agreed to train you because I owed a favor to Lord Ndrath. His favor does not extend to me wasting any time making a sword for a lesser being. I am going to hold on to Dawn's ballad for now." Arthur questioned, "For now? Will you give it back to me?" Ren said, "Dawn's ballad might be just a sharp tool, but it still chose you. I am not proud of this particular piece, but I am not going to take it away. For now, you can use this for your training. I created it to measure the movements the user produces and the force of the impact it receives." Before Ren and Winsome left, Ren told Arthur to pass him the dragon feather and instructed Arthur to stay at the center of the barren crater, as there won't always be a fluffy bed waiting for him during war. Ren said he was doing this for Arthur's own good and wished him a good night. During the night, while Arthur was asleep, the golems started crawling out and attacked him. Ren yelled from the cliff, "You will never truly be at rest while you are in the middle of a war, kid. You need to get used to fighting effectively in a suboptimal state. Now strip and resume battle." Arthur's goal was to take down the golem generals marked with crowns on their heads. Arthur activated his realm heart and used lightning spells to break through one of the golems. He then noticed a white golem that protected him from a hit by a black golem. Ren said, "You will have allies in battle as one of the main players in the fight. It will be up to you whether you choose to take the offensive or stay near your team, keeping them alive." Soon Arthur took down the general. Ren said, "The total number of casualties on your side was 271, while the other side had 512. Not an impressive victory considering the weaker levels of the enemy golems. You let too many of your own die." Arthur said, "Maybe it's because they look like stone gorillas, and I feel no empathy for them, regardless of whether they are on my team or not." Ren replied, "I will keep that in mind. Go to sleep now. Tomorrow is not going to get any easier." The next day, when Arthur woke up, he noticed a black-horned demon grabbing Tasha by the neck. Arthur instantly cast a static voice spell and slashed off the demon's arm. However, the demon dodged the next attack and regenerated its arm. The demon then launched multiple red spike attacks towards Arthur. Arthur blocked the attacks with a light spell, but immediately noticed one of the black spikes flying towards Tasha. Arthur once again cast the static void to block it. Arthur thought that the situation had gone on for long enough and yelled for Ren to stop it. Ren appeared and said, "You caught on rather quickly. I was hoping to let the situation play out a bit more to see how you handled it." Arthur said, "It's hard not to catch on to such an absurd scenario. I hope you're not doing this just for kicks." Ren replied, "Regardless of your logical expression, what I did was for your benefit. Look at the state you are in now. You have expended most of your energy on a reckless attempt to save that elf." Arthur said, "Look, I know it wasn't the best course of action, but there are people I consider more important than anyone else, including myself." Ren pointed out that it was still a reckless use of energy, even if familial bonds and mates are important. Arthur denied that Tess was a mate, but Ren found it interesting and said, "From what Winsome told me and judging by your reaction, I was sure that her importance to you went beyond mere infatuation. You two haven't yet engaged in carnal intimacy, Arthur replied. No, look, this is beside the point. So, you can just create a dummy of anything using Earth? Ren said, I can single-handedly create all sorts of scenarios. I can't do everything, though. I would not be able to mimic the properties of water using Earth, for instance. By the way, how were you able to pick up that it was all fake? Arthur explained. After I calmed down a bit, I realized that I was able to see the fluctuation of yellow earthen monoparticles all over both of them. They were quite realistic, but it really makes no sense for a basilisk to drag Testaphatus. Arthur questioned if it was impossible for lesser beings to reach such a level of insight as Asiras are capable of. Ren explained it goes against my nature to deem anything impossible, but I will say it is highly improbable. But you, of all people, should not be worried about that. The fact is that you are a walking collection of statistical improbabilities. You have an innate ability to comprehend the workings of the four main elements, plus some of their deviating elemental forms. Ren continued, coinciding so neatly with the fact that comprehension of all four elements is necessary to unlock the mysteries of ether, which the very princess of dragons just so happened to kindly bestow upon you. Everything about you is an outlier, boy. For that, give me your dominant hand. This is a mineral called a chlorite. By itself, it is a rather rare but useless piece of rock. However, with the right refining and synthesizing process, which I will keep under my grave, so don't bother asking, it is capable of something remarkable. Ren stabbed the mineral into Arthur's hand and said, I synthesized the chlorite with Lady Sylvia's feather, as well as a scale from Lady Sylvie. These are both indispensable components of what makes you who you are. Ren explained every moment, action, thought, and change in your body will factor into how your weapon will manifest. Even I have no idea how it will turn out if it even comes out as a weapon. Arthur questioned, then why do it this way if the outcome is uncertain? And I thought you were not going to make a weapon for me. Ren said you are going to need more than just a sharp stick to get by the Vritra clan and their spawn, and we are running out of time. Arthur worriedly asked, I thought I had about 2 more years left before the war is expected to begin. Ren replied, Winsome just received word from Aldir with the most recent news from Dicathan. I'm telling you this against Winsome and Lord Andrath's wishes, but I want you to make a logical decision knowing all the information. Ren continued, the chlorite is unpredictable. It might take a year or maybe even 5 before it manifests itself into a weapon, but still you will need to strengthen yourself for the war. Arthur said, if the war has already started, then I need to go back and fight. Ren cast a golem to stop him and said, and then what? It killed without accomplishing anything? You are not ready yet. Trust in Winsome's plan. Arthur questioned, but what if it's too late by the time I am ready? Ren replied, if you can't make it in time, you can't make it at all. But before that happens, I promise you, we will do whatever we can to make sure you have the means to do so. So give me 1 year, and with my help you will actually be able to give Dicathan a fighting chance. Back to Dicathan. Tasha requested to join the fight but was rejected by Virian and Aldir. Aldir explained that the risk of putting her out in the field was too high and unnecessary at the moment. Tasha countered, asking how much longer they would wait until the risk of attack outweighed the risk of her being on the battlefield, especially considering she had grown much stronger than before. Aldir responded that, despite her progress, it still wasn't enough. After Tasha left, Aldir spoke to Virian, reminding him of how much Tasha meant to Arthur Lewin and stating that having her on the battlefield would impede his judgment. When Tasha approached the teleportation area, she was blocked by a guard who informed her that leaving without permission from Commander Virian or Lord Aldir was not allowed. Lance Vere stepped in and claimed that Tasha was running an errand with him, which prompted the guards to open the door. With Vere's assistance, Tasha successfully reached Ediston City. Tasha questioned Vere, asking if he was sure about wanting to babysit her. Vere assured her that he had just finished his lessons with Princess Kathleen and could use a little break. Ediston City was once the humans' capital in the country of Sapin. Due to the ongoing fights and the Beast Glades, it had become the furthest city from the battle and an ideal defensive location with 3 sides bordered by the ocean. Despite this, King Glader had the city torn down and rebuilt to serve as the last line of defense against the Elacrian army. Pere reminded Tasha to keep her sword out and ready at all times. Tasha questioned why, considering Vere was with her, and pointed out that the city was far away from the fighting. Vere explained that in times of war, it was necessary to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. During their conversation, Barry mentioned that Curtis was determined and hardworking but made slow progress in his mana comprehension, despite being a beast tamer. On the other hand, Kathleen was progressing well in her training, and Vere believed she was naturally more gifted than others. Tesha asked if Vere believed the Alacrian army would be able to reach Ediston City. She mentioned that her grandfather had told her that Alacria was to the west of Dicathan, making Ediston the closest city to the enemy. Vere confirmed that the enemy planned to use teleportation gates hidden throughout the beast glades to transport a considerable force and keep them hidden until they were ready to strike. Tesha reflected on the limited knowledge they had about their enemy, mostly obtained from Director Cynthia. She mentioned that Master Aldir had partially broken the curse that prevented Cynthia from revealing information about her homeland, but she had ended up comatose. The war had strained Tesha's relationship with her grandfather, but she knew he and the council were doing everything they could on the social front. With the deaths of King and Queen Graysunders, the dwarves had launched a rebellion, and the council worked to regain their allegiance while urging individual cities to prepare for military action. Despite the stressful situation, Tesha felt she was making good progress in her training. Suddenly, Tesha nearly bumped into Emily. Reacting quickly, Tesha drew her sword, but then realized it was Emily. Emily apologized for carrying too many things and explained that her glasses had slipped, making it difficult for her to see where she was going. She realized she shouldn't be wasting time and hurriedly mentioned that the papers she was carrying were important. Master Gideon had requested aid from a lance to the council. Tesha nodded at Lance Vere and decided to follow after Emily. Tesha questioned, "So what are you and Professor Gideon working on nowadays anyway? I have not seen you at the castle in a while." Emily said, "Don't call him Professor. My nut job of a master can hardly be considered sane, let alone a proper educator of future generations. I swear I have lost count of how many times I have had to dig my master out from under a pile of debris and useless junk after an explosion he caused." From their conversation, Tesha had been locked down for over a year in a castle with a Sira and an overbearing grandfather who made breathing seem dangerous. Emily, on the other hand, was stuck with someone like Master for hours every day, and that had affected her sense of humor. For Elijah, it had been a long time, and Tesha had no idea why Elijah was taken alive. All she knew was that he had been trying to save her when he was captured. Just as Emily was about to say something, they arrived. Upon their arrival, Gideon quickly rushed out to receive the report Emily brought. Gideon informed Vere that he had submitted a formal request to the council, but since Vere was already there, he believed it would be beneficial if Vere came along with him. Now, the four of them were heading to the eastern coast on the northern border of the Beast Glades. When they reached their destination, at first, Tesha thought it was the Dicathias. However, Gideon explained that until a few weeks ago, this ship had been fully submerged in the ocean. Gideon wouldn't have known about it if a group of adventurers hadn't come across it just as the tides turned. Emily questioned, "But what about all the crew members that were on this ship? Do you think they all drowned?" Gideon replied, "No, there would be at least some remains left. There are no remains, no evidence, nothing. The crew definitely did not want anyone seeing this ship, let alone whatever or whoever they had inside." After reading the report, I prayed to whatever divine being was watching over us that my guess was wrong. I thought maybe only the lost crew of the original Dicathias had made it back in one piece, but after examining it, I'm positive that this ship is not, and never was, the Dicathias, nor is it from Dicathan, which means that Electra has the ability to build ships capable of carrying whole battalions across the ocean to Dicathan. Virion thought things seemed to be escalating a lot faster than we had prepared for, or perhaps we, as rulers, are unprepared. After Gideon explained everything, the council became worried about this situation. Lacria is capable of sending thousands of soldiers and mages across the ocean. It's bad enough that Dicathan has been having trouble sniffing out those bastards from inside the dungeons of the Beast Glades. Aldir said, if the Alacrians' goal was to divide our forces, it would make more sense for them to leave it somewhere along the western coast, where they would want us to think they will attack. Adelarcrian Cynthia was it? She was under the impression that her people were trying to amass an army over time in the depths of the Beast Glades, but it would be foolish to believe that was the only move the Vritra had planned. We have no choice but to prepare ourselves for a two-pronged attack, but with the dwarves without any leaders, we are short on troops and mages. Lane requested that Muriel and Alduin allow him and Priscilla to join their next visit to the kingdom of Darv. They need to fortify the city along the western coast. Virion thought, to think that Alacria had access to transport their soldiers by sea all this time, and that Tesha had gotten onto one of their ships. I can't even be upset that Vere allowed Tesha to come along. Honestly, I am surprised it took Tasha that long to leave the castle. Soon, Virian told Tasha to come over to show her something. Virian said, "This is a real recording from a battle just 5 days ago. Out of the 400 we sent down into the dungeon, we lost 200 men and 20 mages in that battle alone. I was the one who gave them the order to go down, and it is on my shoulders that they are all dead. The war has only just begun, but I have already done things and made choices that I will never forgive myself for. It is my selfishness as your grandfather that makes me want to keep you safe and away from harm, regardless of how much of an asset you may be in battle. Tasha, you are no doubt a tremendously talented mage, and with the training you have undergone these past 2 years, you would be a force to be reckoned with in a war. But no matter how powerful you are only one person. All it takes is one mistake, one small blunder. That is why I have forbidden you to take part in any of the battles. Tasha, even after seeing just a glimpse of what you will have to endure, do you still want to be a part of the battle?" Tasha nodded and confidently replied yes. Virian threw a sword to her and asked, "Then prove your resolve." The battle began. Virian activated his beast will and launched a slashing attack towards Tasha. Tasha dodged and controlled her vines to attack Virian. While Virian was busy dodging, Tasha blinked behind him, planning to launch an assault. But Virian was alerted and blocked with his sword, grabbing Tasha's arm and pulling her down. Tasha controlled her vines to push herself out, preparing for her next attack. Virian said, "Your control over your beast will has gotten much better." Soon, Tasha's vines enveloped her, and with an explosion, she warned Virian to be careful. After a long battle, both Virian and Tasha were injured. But with Virian perfect kick to Tasha, Tasha ultimately lost. Tasha said, "I couldn't even land a clean hit after that, Grandpa." Virian told her on the battlefield, "You are to address me as Commander, not Grandpa." Virian told Tasha, "But I have a few conditions. You must still get consent from both your dad and mom. You must also keep in mind the gravity of who you are. Whoever is leading your team or battalion will definitely mention it, but it is up to you to not become a liability. If your teammates feel you cannot take care of yourself, I will have you removed from the fight immediately. Is taught clear?" Tasha excited nodded her head. Virian warned her, "Try not to get caught in a situation where you need to use your second phase. You have not fully learned to control it, so that form makes you too reckless." Tasha said, "Master Aldir already told me that. He said that the beast will I have assimilated with is different, although he could not really put a finger on why. But don't worry, I will try my best to avoid it. I am gonna find Mom and Dad now." Virian told her, "From here on out, I can no longer be your grandpa. The actions I have taken and the decisions I have made concerning you have always been for your safety and happiness. However, now that you are a soldier, I must treat you like one. This is my final warning to you." Tasha hugged on Virian, told him, "I understand, Commander." Soon Virian went to visit Cynthia. Cynthia currently is under slumber. Virian told Cynthia the Alarcrian army is capable of building steamships and is most likely using them to transport tens of thousands of soldiers to our shores. "I'm sure you did not know. After all, you were already here when we began construction on the Dicathias. About Tasha is going to battle. I know how much she wants to make a difference and be a part of the fight, and I know how stubborn she is. It is hard for me doing all this. I am the only fit leader of the Tri-Union's joint military forces. I have already outlived my wife. I don't want to live longer than my children and grandchild too. I don't think I can take it. And I never apologized to you. I had a feeling something was wrong. You knew, did not you? That Lord Aldir did not fully remove the curse on you. You knew you might die if you revealed information about Alacria, about the Vritra. I also sensed it, but I did not stop you. For a chance to gain the higher ground in this war, I allowed you to succumb to this state, and I will never forgive myself for that. I should not have let it come to this. Not after all we have been through together. There might be people who shun you for being a spy, but I would never. You chose to stand up against your own people to help ours. The true war is going to start soon. I won't be able to come down here for a while, my friend. I will promise you that after this war is over, I will do whatever it takes to wake you back up." Tasha is leader of the team. They are clearing off those monsters. After they'd done their mission back to camp, then Tasha met Helen and Twin Horn Party. Tasha introduced her teammates to them. Darvis Clairel, the fourth son of the distinguished House Clairel, and he was a talented prodigy in mana control and had the reflexes to match, but arrogant for good reason. Carrier Reda from the Reda family were just as known for their unique gauntlet techniques as the Clairels were known for their axemanship. This included Carrier, whose parents had failed to produce any sons. Darvis being kicked out of the house and into battle by his father as soon as he reached the solid yellow core stage, and Carrier, who had basically been exiled after being raised as a son her whole life by her traditional parents. The two made quite a pair. Still, despite his crass personality, Darvis only really cared about two things: flirting with women and watching out for his childhood friend, Carria. Carria Regal was just as headstrong as Darvis, maybe more so, but was also bright and optimistic, despite her harsh upbringing. She was also the glue that held this team together. Stannard, the last member, he can store actual spells into beast cores. He made a very distinct impression during his assessment. A dark yellow stage conjurer at the time with a dual affinity for fire and wind. He had a deficiency in his mana core which prevented him from storing the normal amount of mana for his core leaf. Still, Stannard proved that his peculiar and useful deviant powers made up for it. Tesha questioned, "Helen, what brings you all here?" Helen replied, "We just came back from the wall. Oh, it has been hard at the wall. We were sent here to help with scouting, and it is best you prepare for what is to come." The Twin Horn Party was at the wall for about 4 months. The wall serves as a base, but the fighting takes place along the border of the beast glades, and the mages are not the main problem, it is the beasts. That is why the higher-ups sent us here. Helen explained. Mutants, mana beasts that were corrupted and controlled by the Alacrians, were mostly rulers of their own dungeons. Through the mutants, the Alacrians were able to control hundreds of mana beasts that served them. As long as these mutants existed, other mana beasts of their species would follow them, fighting for the Alacrian soldiers. There were dozens of squads deep inside various dungeons trying to find and kill the mutants before the Alacrians could gather a significant number of mana beasts and fully advance toward the wall. A dungeon that my team and I were assigned happened to be home to an S-class mutant beast. Winning the fight down here was crucial to the war. When Tesha requested more information about the wall, Adam became angry and told her, "Fights at the wall are not bedtime stories that your nanny reads to you in your fancy canopy bed." But Tesha stared at him and said, "I'm aware of that. I'm asking because when we defeat the beast here, my team will be sent to the battlefield and I would like them to be prepared." Angela pulled Adam away and Durden explained, "Don't take Adam's words to heart. It has been rough on the field. Adam only reacted like that because he did not want you to know." Helen described, "The Alacrian soldiers are much more monstrous than any mana beasts here. At least the creatures you battle here fight for survival and instinct. They fight to kill, and to some extent, that is merciful." Jasmine reminded them, "Information is the most important thing in a war. Both sides are trying to get information out of each other, and that means imprisonment and torture. Battles here are black and white, beasts are bad, and you are good." Later, Tesha and Helen went to see Drogo at the treatment center as a man injured in battle was just brought in for treatment. They wished to obtain more information. As the man woke up, he explained that his teammates had all died. He had a disagreement with his teammates, so he stayed behind, but he felt guilty right away, so he could not leave them and trailed behind them. When he got back, they had already walked into an ambush of gnolls far deadlier than the ones up here. There must have been hundreds of them, and some were even equipped with man-made weapons. He was lucky, but he had to hide out for days before he managed to set up the teleportation gate. He could not risk activating it there in case the gnolls destroyed it before they could use it, so he ran back. It was this huge door behind them, like they were protecting whatever was on the other side. "I think we found it. Sir, we found the S-class mutant's den." Just a few minutes later, Drogo's voice echoed through the large cavern, alerting everyone of the scout's message. Everyone in the cavern, over 100 soldiers, scurried around to prepare themselves for the impending battle. Soon Drogo said, "Vanguard teams, listen up. Brace yourselves upon arrival. There is no telling how many mana beasts will be on the other side." As they moved forward, some of the humans died, but Tesha's team was doing well in striking down mana beasts. Stannard's attacks worked very well in the battle. Drogo told everyone that this was an overwhelming triumph, despite the surprise attack on them from the army of mana beasts. "We will continue forth. Our comrades' deaths will not be in vain." Stannard thought, how can it be a victory if, to some people, the weight of one death means so much more than a simple number? I wonder how many more will die today. Tesha was upset that they had lost 10 soldiers in this fight. She thought, at this rate, I won't catch up to Arthur. Darvis said, "Not him again. We describe him as if he is some all-powerful, inhumanly charismatic hotshot without a single flaw. There is no way you are not being biased." Carria laughed and said, "You're just jealous because Arthur is everything you wish you could be." Later on, as they continued their way, Drogo told everyone, "We will soon reach the point where our scout, Sayer, and his team were ambushed by mana beasts." As they walked in front, they noticed plenty of dead mana beasts. Darvis said, "I am not sure whether to be relieved or scared." And they noticed a huge door, and while everyone stayed in formation, someone said, "The door is not fully closed." When they opened it, it was full of dead mana beasts stacked like a hill, and Arthur was sitting on top of it. Tesha questioned, "Arthur, is that you?" Sylvie instantly jumped to Tesha's side. Tesha told Drogo, "Stop it, she is friendly." Drogo questioned, "Who are you? State your name." Arthur told him, "I am an ally." Arthur explained, "I arrived less than an hour ago. I had not expected to land in the middle of a massive swarm of mana beasts." Drogo, curious, asked, "You mean you single-handedly killed all of those mana beasts behind you, including the S-class mutant?" Arthur replied, "Do you see anyone else here?" Of course, most people didn't really believe it. Stannard questioned, "What about all the beast cores?" Arthur said, "My bond has quite a large appetite for beast cores." Drogo said, "That little thing ate all the beast cores." Suddenly, a mana beast rushed towards Arthur. Arthur sliced off its head, saying, "Sorry, I must have missed one. Anyway, if you must question me more, can I at least wash up and have something to eat first?" Tesha said, "The twin horns and I will vouch for him, leader. We will make sure he gets escorted back to base without trouble." Arthur said, "Thank you." Tesha thought, "There is no doubt that this is my childhood friend, but there is still an ease in my chest. It has been years since I last saw him, and I imagined our reunion going differently." I could tell everyone was restless from his sudden appearance. Arthur was clearly keeping secrets. He only seemed to debrief what was necessary. It left Drogo unsatisfied, but gave him enough to plan the next course of a sit-in. After everyone laughed, Arthur said, "I have missed you, Tess." Tess hugged Arthur and replied, "You idiot, I missed you too." Arthur teased her, saying, "You're still a crybaby, aren't you?" Tesha playfully told him to shut up and informed him that a lot had changed since they last saw each other. Meanwhile, Darvis couldn't believe that one person could handle so many mana beasts. Teriel laughed at him and said, "Do I smell a hint of jealousy?" Stannard corrected her, saying, "You mean envy. Jealousy is what you feel when you worry someone will take something you possess. Envy is longing after something someone else has." Darvis stood up and declared, "I got it. I will challenge him to a duel." After Tesha and Arthur finished their meeting, Darvis formally challenged Arthur Leowin to a duel. Arthur questioned, "I know I already accepted, but was there a particular reason why you wanted to have this duel?" Darvis replied, "A man's pride." Drogo intervened and said, "All right, let's refresh the rules before we begin. Keep mana usage strictly to body augmentations. The first to yield or otherwise become incapacitated loses." Drogo thought to himself that Darvis was a very capable soldier and that this kid would definitely put up a fight. He was curious to see if Arthur was as strong as he claimed. Battle began as Darvis dashed forward with his axe, but he was instantly immobilized by a gaze from Arthur. Stannard couldn't believe what he was seeing. He had witnessed Darvis mercilessly hacking away at A-class mana beasts with cruel efficiency and beating down adventurers twice his size. But now he noticed something he thought Darvis lacked: fear. Darvis attempted another dash attack, but Arthur effortlessly dodged it and countered with a powerful punch. When Darvis blinked behind him, Arthur swiftly evaded and delivered a series of punches, eventually defeating Darvis. Carrie observed that his mana flow rupturing. Stannard added, "You mean where clusters of mana channels get blocked? Those points are supposedly naturally protected when an augmenter strengthens his body. I think we just witnessed something amazing." Darvis yelled in frustration, "What is going on? Why can't I move?" Virion assured him, saying, "You'll be fine, boy. Isn't that right, Arthur?" After greeting with each other, Virion told Arthur there are things urgently to discuss, and this is not the right place to do so. Tesha was upset about Arthur needing to leave so quickly. Nonetheless, Aldir brought Arthur to the teleport gate. As they were leaving, Arthur questioned Sylvie, "How come you didn't talk to Tess back there?" Sylvie replied, "A lady needs to have a secret or two. I'll surprise Tesha with it next time." While passing by the teleport gate, Arthur saw a big bear standing in front of him, and Ellie popped up from its head. Arthur was shocked when Ellie jumped on him from a height. Arthur told her, "You're too old to be jumping on people." Ellie yelled, "Dad and Mom, come quickly," but Arthur seemed unsure of what to do. However, Ray and Alice hugged him. Alice said, "The person that I have raised for over a decade has come back after years of training. I think that deserves a hug." Ray told him, "I'm sure they gave you hell up there." Alice added, "Besides, I have invested too much in you." Arthur replied, "You're right, you both have given more than I deserve." Ellie questioned, "Brother, you're not going to ask me about Boo?" Arthur asked, "This giant dog is named Boo?" Boo wondered, making fun of my name, and patted Arthur. Ellie said, "He just wanted to see if you were as strong as I told him you were. Boo's just competitive like that." Arthur was surprised that Ellie could talk to this beast. Virion explained, "Lord Winsome gave this mana beast to your family as a gift before you departed to Ephiatus. Aldir said, "As moved as I am to have witnessed this warm family reunion, the rest will need to wait until after our discussion. Your family is living here for the time being, as I thought it would be in your best interest. You will see them again." I moved to the meeting room, where Virion told Arthur there is still a lot about the status of the war that you haven't been caught up on. Cynthia is currently in a state of self-induced slumber to cope with the effects of the curse that activated when she disclosed intel on the Elacrians. During the following conversation, Arthur spent hours bombarding the two leaders with all the questions he had. He had been out of the loop for almost 2 years, and Winsome and Wren only told him information they thought was necessary. According to Virion, the Gladers had been focusing most of their efforts in the kingdom of Darv, hoping to regain the allegiance of the dwarves. Curtis and Kathleen did what Tess had done and formed a team to gain real battle experience on the front lines. Arthur's family was at the castle for protection, but the Helstia family had gone elsewhere. Vincent was using his resources to assist with the war efforts. Reynolds was interested in joining the war, but Virion told him to restrain himself until either Arthur returned or Alina was a bit older. Arthur thanked Virion, as he couldn't imagine how he would have felt if his father had died in the war while he was not there. Virion turned serious and told Arthur evidence has recently come to light that has confirmed that very suspicion. Aldir continued, "Now, Arthur, I cannot have you blaming yourself for what I am about to tell you." Aldir said, "It is not the Dicathias, if that is what you are wondering. That is a ship built by the Elacrians using your design." Suddenly, someone opened the door and said, "They have been sighted. They are approaching the western coast. The Elacrian ships. They are here." Upon hearing this, Arthur rushed to the teleport gate. The guard stopped him and asked for authorization, but when Arthur released his bloodlust, they almost couldn't breathe. Aldir told them, "Arthur is free to leave if he wishes it," and he told Arthur, "Don't do anything foolish. It would be a shame to have wasted Winsome's time." Arthur took the teleport gate to Ediston. Meanwhile, Cynthia sighed, and 2 black shadows stood beside her, saying, "It is imperative that you give us as much information as possible. Your knowledge can win us this war, Director. Think of the millions of lives you can help save by cooperating. It's all right if you die from the after effects of the curse." Cynthia opened her eyes and thought, "Die? Didn't Lord Aldir lift the curse?" The scene shifted to a memory. Virion questioned Cynthia, "What do you plan on doing now that the war is over? I have known you for quite some time now. For some of those years we were enemies, and for some we were not. Always I kept thinking to myself one thing." Cynthia asked, "What was that?" "Your undying love for me," Virion replied. "Sorry, but no. Did you forget I am married? We elves are loyal. What I kept thinking was what a great mentor and inspiration you would make. Hell, I could see you as the head of some prestigious academy, leading the up-and-coming youth toward a greater future." Cynthia said, "Then maybe I will just open up an academy of my own. I have taken a liking to Zyrus City." Virion suggested, "An academy for mages atop a floating city? I like it." Cynthia suggested, "Then what do you say we open the school together?" Virion denied and replied, "Maybe I will send my future grandkids or even great-grandkids when they come of age." From the following conversation, Cynthia decided to name it Zyrus Academy, and they hoped for its success. Virion woke up from this memory when soldiers from outside told him that the scream seemed to come from 1 floor below. Arthur and Sylvia arrived at the western coast, and Arthur thought about what Virion